All of lifestyle changes has to be practical, otherwise you're not going to do them.
Welcome to Let's Talk Thyroid, where we explore different aspects of living a healthy thyroid lifestyle, positively and practically, to help you thrive and not just survive. Join me, Annabelle Bateman, your host, and Let's Talk Thyroid. Jackie Iles is a woman who wears many hats. She's a mum of two, a holistic nurse consultant, lifestyle consultant, health coach, Reiki Master, and a Blue Diamond essential oil educator. She's passionate about empowering women of all ages to stand in their confidence, to walk in their highest vision, to be brave, to kick old stories to the curb, and to embrace and create their dream life for themselves and their families. You're never too old or too late to shine bright, says Jackie Iles. Please join me as we have a beautiful conversation and as Jackie shares her Hashimoto's story. Welcome, Jackie, to my Let's Talk Thyroid podcast. I'm really thrilled. You're actually the very first guest that I'm interviewing officially for my podcast.
Oh, yay!
So I know we've tried to connect for a little while, and so obviously this is the perfect timing for it. So welcome and thank you.
My pleasure. It is the perfect time. Absolute perfect time.
Yeah. So what I'm wanting to do, Jackie, is really just explore your thyroid story, because one of the things I'm wanting to do on this show is just introduce real people to the audience. And you know, I think we've all of us with Hashimoto's thyroid issues have our own story. And so I think the more of us that talk about it, the more we can help each other. And if I can learn a little bit from your journey and you can learn a little bit from mine and we can all learn a little bit from each other, then it can help us piece together the jigsaw.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So where did this thyroid journey start for you?
Well, it started probably about 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. So I am a holistic nurse consultant, and my specialty was working in health retreats.
And I've got some questions about that. That's good. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I haven't aired this bit, so this will be really interesting.
Oh, woohoo. This is the exclusive with Jackie Iles.
Absolutely. So I loved my job, loved what I did. It was intense. So it required me to live on premises. Uh-huh. I was on call for 3 to 4 days, 24/7 on premises. Okay. So any phone call so I was on call during the day and as well overnight. I was the number one, I suppose, traditionally medically trained person on the retreat in the early days. Yeah. And so I was required to be that one to make that call at all times. And that extended even when I wasn't on premises. So I was hooked to a pager 24/7 and was expected to act as soon as that pager beeped and went off.
Okay.
So I was trained very well in sleeping lightly and being activated in that fight or flight response very quickly. Yeah. Prior to, and why I said yes to this amazing experience in a health retreat, prior to that, I was a on-call and home care, palliative care specialist nurse. So again, working in people's homes 24/7. And because I was studying, I did the night shift.
Right.
So sleep was something that I didn't do well. I didn't need to, but I was trained in performing at an acute level at any time with little sleep, and I could do it. So I kind of chose those roles in my profession that allowed me to act in that way and to get away with as little sleep as possible because I was used to it. Yeah. Take you back to my childhood, and I still to this day when I can't, and it's not often that I can't sleep anymore, But when I was a child, when I couldn't sleep, and that was very frequently, my father would take me through this meditation. And still to this day, on the odd occasion, maybe once or twice a year, that I cannot go to sleep, I will take myself through this full body meditation that my dad used to do for me.
Oh, how beautiful.
So sleep, absolutely, high quality sleep was never something that ever featured in my life up until I found frankincense and lavender, not for myself, but for my son.
Wow. Okay.
So backstory, sleep for me and that critical, deep, restorative phase of well-being was something that was so lacking right from the get-go in the way that I presented in my life. Yeah. So cut a long story short, get to me, health retreat, on call 24/7, acting, never allowing myself to restoratively relax. I ended up with a couple of significant infections. One was a parasitic infection, and being in the bush and doing a lot of outdoor ed activities, the Australian bush, and particularly southeast Queensland Australian bush, is a hotbed for ticks.
Yeah.
So undiagnosed tick allergy, as well as a parasitic gut infection. Those two things tipped me into, and a glandular fever, again at the health retreat, but I now question whether it was actually glandular fever or it was acute tick allergy that wasn't diagnosed specifically. Okay. So those two events really tipped me into my thyroid crashing. So, and it didn't crash, it was bubbling. So I just couldn't being a nurse, I knew the symptoms. I had this flu-like symptoms that just wouldn't go. And for about 3 months, I just felt under par. I was still racing around doing me, but there was we know those signs, that fog, that heaviness, energy was just leaking from me. Throat, glands, we all know that story. And so I finally had some time, and I just went, I had the dispensary of herbs, homeopathics. I had every high quality naturopathic prescription that you could imagine. Nothing was just getting rid of these flu symptoms. Yeah. So I made an appointment for the doctor thinking I needed just a course of antibiotics. Obviously something's going on and I'll be back on my merry way. From the time that I made that appointment, things really started to go pear-shaped. And I think I made an appointment with 2 weeks in advance to see a doctor. Within that time frame, I had put on a dress size. So when I recognized something was going on, within that 2 week time frame, I'd put on a dress size, and I'd always been very flexible, always been very sporty. And I had gone from a plus 30, so my toes, and then extended another 30 centimetres.
Wow.
Not even to being able to just touch my toes. So that was significant for me. I was a size 6'8", and went from a 6'8" up to like a 9, 10 and 11.
Within a 2 week period.
In 2 week period. Even though I wasn't big, that was significant for me. Yeah. Even though I could touch my toes, the fact that I couldn't touch past it was significant for me. Yeah. So when I went to the doctor, not only did I have these flu-like symptoms I wanted to talk about, I had gone, throat, this has to be thyroid. Right. Like, these are thyroid symptoms, and I'm a nurse. So I walked on in, wanted to be really time efficient and go, this is what's going on. I think it's my thyroid. And the doctor looked at me and did not like the fact that I'd obviously self-diagnosed.
Right.
And focused not on my symptoms and the fact that for me, being at that time a size 9 or 10 was significantly different, and not being able to touch past my toes was significantly different for me. She just focused on that I had body dysmorphia. So she was
wow. Okay.
the individual symptoms for this individual person. She was judging the fact, you should be happy that you're a size 9 or 10.
If it was really your thyroid, you'd be much bigger than that kind of thing.
Absolutely. Not focusing on in a 2-week period. This was significant for this person.
Yeah.
So she started lecturing me on body dysmorphia, and that I possibly had a query eating disorder and body dysmorphic. And I had asked for a path slip. I need my bloods checked. She refused to give me that. She gave me instead a referral to a nutritionist and to a psych.
Right.
I was really angry, and I sat there and I refused to budge until she wrote me out thyroid function tests. I won the Mexican standoff. She wrote me the significant tests, and I went there and then and got my bloods done. And within, I think it was 2 days later. So no, it must have been the next day. The next day I was driving into the city I was doing a postgrad in psychology, and I was going to college. And I was on the Story Bridge peak hour. I forgot. There's so much to this story.
I know.
Okay.
When you go back and when you've got a 20-something year story, I know. I get it. It's all good.
Yeah. Okay, so I had a major panic attack on the Story Bridge in peak hour traffic. Didn't know who I was, where I was going, or what I was doing. And that's right. The significant kicker for me to go, to really know that it was my thyroid was I was sitting in front of a client at the health retreat I was working at, and I lost my mind. I lost my memory. I didn't know why I was doing what I was doing, who she was, what she was there for. And for 1.5 hours, I had to fake it. So this was in the significant period from having my bloods done and then these 2 events. And luckily, when I was on the Story Bridge, I remember that there was a functional doctor just over the bridge. So if I got myself to that doctor, I was safe. In the meantime, my phone was pinging. My blood results had been rushed through the lab, and I was critically unwell, and they were about to hospitalize me.
Wow.
So that's
and
the pinging was the doctor who told me that I needed a psych consult was ringing apologetic and trying to explain to me, I wouldn't take a phone call, how critically unwell I was. I sat in the doctor's surgery at New Farm for a couple of hours until the doctor could see me. They pulled up my bloods and they got me in straight away. And 8 weeks of medical bed rest until I had enough functioning thyroid hormone to be able to do anything.
So you were really at rock bottom in terms of that thyroid.
The doctors hadn't seen bloods like it in someone who was still functioning.
Yeah,
and
that's
walking
so
around in their life.
Yeah. I don't know what they were, but I remember very similar. Like my very first blood test, my TSH was 185.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the doctor's saying, how are you coping? I'm like, I don't know. I just do. I don't know any different. This is just, I thought this was normal. Yeah. But, to your credit, when there's something not right.
Yes.
And I guess for you, that benefit of your medical training, you were able to piece that together in terms of that gut feeling that it was thyroid. You knew the symptoms and you could stand your ground. Not a lot of people can do that, not in that Mexican standoff way that you described, because we go in and I'm lucky in that sense that I think I'd hit pretty low before I even went, and so then it was picked up straight away, and I've never had a problem. But I know a lot of people have difficulty being diagnosed with Hashimoto's because those sorts of things. Oh no, it's this, it's that, it's, you know, you're depressed, we'll put you on antidepressants, you just need to lose weight, go to the dietitian, all of those sorts of things.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, but people know, and I think that's something that I'm hoping that this podcast and sort of just raising awareness around all these thyroid issues helps people who suspect that they've got something wrong just have that bit of extra courage to keep digging, keep getting tested, keep asking, or find a different doctor that understands the complexity of thyroid more and is prepared to get the tests.
Absolutely. And you sent me through some questions, and one of the questions was, what would I do differently? Is I would stand my ground more strongly, and I would doctor hop until I got what I felt was service to me.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And have you been, over the years, have you been able to do that?
Absolutely. I am so lucky now that I run the show, that my doctor pretty much just oversees, twigs if need be, trusts that in a 20-year journey that I know my body better than he does and how it relates and acts in certain times of stress and certain times of restoration and wellness.
So going back, that you're diagnosed, you have 8 weeks bed rest till you vaguely functioning again. What was the advice that you were given back then by, what was the treatment what did you do?
The treatment was because the treatment was bed rest.
Okay.
And I had my doctor ringing me a couple of times a day to make sure I was on bed rest. I had my mum, my neighbours, my best friend and my husband ensuring that I was on bed rest because I did refuse to go to hospital.
Yeah.
I said I could manage it at home. So bed rest, thyroid, well, obviously it was treatment there and then. They were hesitant to put me on such a high dose straight away. So it was like gradual stages. Yeah. And because my background I came from the health retreat industry, my background was natural medicine. I started with acupuncture, with diet and herbal therapy concurrently with medical therapy as well.
Okay.
And I still to this day don't like the smell of maca powder. I use it, but it still makes me gag and it still takes me back almost like post-traumatic because of the amounts of maca I had to have.
Wow. Yeah, maca's one of those things that I sort of remember every now and again. I think, I should be using maca. So is that something that is part of your wellness regime? In fact, I think it was something you posted recently, like, maca, I've got to get the maca out. Yeah.
Absolutely. I had forgotten to use it for a while, and it does make a significant difference to my thyroid function, and there's some very cool research to suggest that it is good for us to use.
Awesome. So do you just add it into a smoothie, or how do you use it?
I often make it into my raw chocolates. I do have a capsule form of it and in smoothies. I have to disguise the flavour.
Yeah. And it's interesting, isn't it? It's that memory. It's probably that memory. I don't find the flavour terrible, but I don't have that negative association with it in that sense. But
I had little to no digestive function when I was finally diagnosed. So it was very hard to digest anything. And I think maca was just one of those things that just went down harder than everything else.
Yeah. So, Jackie, over the years, in terms of managing your thyroid health, what are the key things that have worked for you?
Sleep therapy, self-love, knowing that I am okay and that I am safe and that I am safe to be who I am and to express myself on all levels. essential oils, food therapy. So when I really started to see significant changes in my wellness was when I really looked at the inflammatory load.
Yeah.
So I would always talk to someone in terms of diet first, to lessen the inflammation, to increase your gut function, and then sleep therapy, and then supplementation on top of that, including essential oils.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so multifaceted, isn't it? It's that holistic approach, and you're a holistic nurse. So that's why, I'm keen to dig into some of these holistic things. And alongside, I think like you, it's alongside the medical. It's not one or the other, it's both.
They both work well together. And when we're sick, we're acutely unwell. And that's where the medical model excels. Yeah. But then it's about looking underneath. And I have learnt, and I know that my thyroid diagnosis was the end of the story. And to be able to look back at those significant periods of activation of stress or inflammation or emotional trauma, that each little bit, because I'm so good at pretending that everything is okay and that I don't matter and everyone else's needs go before mine, that I'll wear it, I'll be okay. That every time I swallowed something, it made a dent in my thyroid.
So do you mean that prior to you being diagnosed or since?
Absolutely. Prior to me being diagnosed. Okay. We need to always, because for me, thyroid's kind of like you've drained your credit card. Like your credit card is, you've got nothing left on the credit card. You've maxed everything out. You've maxed out your bank account. You've maxed out your savings are gone. Your emergency savings gone. The bank account's empty. You've gone to your credit card and you've completely maxed that out. Yeah. So to be able to look at where you maxed everything out beforehand gives us a beautiful roadmap of those areas in our life that we need to address to be able to stand well and thrive in this disorder that we find ourselves juggling for life.
Yeah. I know about 5 or 6 years ago, might have even been a little bit longer than that, but around that period, my doctor prescribed for me a trip to a health retreat, which is why I'm intrigued. I'm sure living at a health retreat is not as exciting as the idea of going on one as a participant. I can imagine. But what I had got to the point where I think those sort of my ability to manage my day-to-day stress was, I wasn't. And so she said, you need to go, you need to sort out your stress, you need to go, stress is impacting your inflammation and your gut health and that whole picture. You need to go off to a health retreat. And so I said, well, are you going to write that down for me? Are you going to actually write that on a script? Like, can I take that home to my husband? And she's like, yep. And she did. And so
Fantastic.
I got home to Lee and I said, Ellen's prescribed me a trip to a health retreat. And he's like, all right, well, that's fine. Off you go. So I spent all this time researching, found this amazing place in Thailand that I was going to spend 10 grand going to, was trying to enlist my sister to come with me. And I sort of realised at that point that I actually needed to work out how to manage my stress when I got back. Like if I went and spent $10,000, $15,000 on this incredible week and I was zenned out and blissed out, and what would happen when I came back to my 3 little boys and a busy household, and what would happen if I didn't know how to manage it on that day-to-day? There was no point in me really going. And so my mistake was I didn't go because I thought...
Oh, you didn't go at all?
I didn't go at all. I know, that was the mistake. I should have done both. I should have gone and worked out how to do the day-to-day. So the mistake was not going, but but it did force... Choosing to not go made me really look at that day-to-day stress management. And I suppose I'm curious, having worked in health retreats for a long time, and
can you read that?
Yeah, Nurse Jackie says go to a health retreat.
As a reward for being well. Congratulate yourself, because that's another thing we don't do very well. I talk personally, we're not good. We deflect a lot. We're not good at receiving.
Yeah. No, 100% agree. I do need to plan that when we can all get back to going to things like that.
Yes.
Yeah. But I'm curious, I suppose, because I'm assuming that a lot of people do go to health retreats because not just for thyroid reasons, but, because stress is out of control. So can you give us some tips for both what's worked for you personally in terms of managing stress, and is going to a health retreat the answer? Is it part of the answer? How do we do it on a day-to-day? Tell us what your strategies have been.
Going to a health retreat is fantastic, but it is about that day-to-day implementation in your life. So we can break down a health retreat day, and we can do that in our lives. So circadian rhythm is really important. So being able to wake when we're meant to wake and go to sleep when we're meant to go to sleep, that means that our master hormones are reset and functioning when they're meant to.
Mm-hmm.
So waking as the sun rises, beautiful breathing, so deep breathing to be able to set a calming aspect of our central nervous system. Mm-hmm. is really important. Gentle movement. We know the power of movement for stress management. Yeah. It doesn't have to be hard, huffy puffy, because we know with particularly low thyroid function and high thyroid function too, the stress can that is contributed to exercise can be pro-inflammatory. And it can, depending on where we are in our journey, it can be exhaustive. So that could be swimming in a pool. That could be some Tai Chi. That could just be gentle yoga and stretching. Mm-hmm. And often, again, I will speak personally for me, you don't max out your thyroid unless you're kind of addicted to Fast and Furious. Were you a Fast and Furious tick?
Oh, yes. 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. So even though
what was the point of exercising if you didn't slog your guts out, fall on the floor, sweat profusely, and be completely shattered? There was no point. No point at all.
Exactly. They used to try and get me to teach Tai Chi, and I was like, what's the point of that? If I'm going to be moving, I got to move fast. You can't expect me to.
So when I did yoga, I did Bikram yoga, and I did 30-day challenges, of course, until I burnt out, and it just kept I kept injuring myself. Do I fit the thyroid picture? Yeah.
Absolutely. So you understand.
I get it.
So respecting the body, mm-hmm. the movement that is appropriate to your holistic well-being.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and we know the benefits of stress management, cortisol management in deep breathing and in exercise. Okay. Being gentle or huffy puffy. We know food is really important. And for those of you listening who don't believe it, please do believe it. Yep. Because I saw the absolute reduction coming off my medication and only having it in the fridge as an emergency. That was able to be achieved when I really looked at how I was fueling my body, mind, and spirit. So I'm dairy-free and gluten-free, preservative-free, and low sugar, low additives.
Yeah, I was going to ask, all of that.
I'm going to have to say, and I don't like saying is a must, but really if you want to look at this, you need to go there. And that's not just going there for a month and going, it doesn't work. Yeah. Because if it's chronic inflammation over 20, 30 years, it's not going to shift in a month. we need to look at this for a good, tell me about it in 12 months' time. And
it's
how
a
you
lifestyle,
feel.
isn't it? It has to
It
become,
is.
when we're dealing with chronic health issues that we have to live with forever, we have to be able to live with them forever and live. That's, yeah, I'm 100 all over, 100%, passionate
You're
about.
a foodie.
I am a foodie. And you know what? I think that, and I come from a family of foodies. You think I'm a foodie, you haven't met my mum. Mum's amazing. Oh. She's incredible. And, that's a whole other story. But I first heard about going, at least I remember dairy-free, sugar-free, possibly gluten-free, not long after I was diagnosed, from a funny little, a really old naturopath in a health food shop near where I worked. And he was the one that first told me that. And I did it for a little while, and then I didn't want to believe it. It was all too hard. And so I think I was told, then my doctor who I see now, started seeing about 14 years ago when I was pregnant with Ben. She said it. I didn't want to believe it. It took me probably a 10-year period, really, when I think about it, to be ready to believe it, do my own reading and research and try it. And now I'll never. And I preach about a bare minimum gluten-free all the time. I think the research is there. I've done plenty of reading. You would have too. Yeah. So if you're listening and you haven't gone there, give it a go. At least give it a go and do some reading and research, because massive difference.
It really does. And I think one of the first things I noticed most significantly was the lifting of the brain fog, which if we're clouded, we can't, everything else, nothing else sticks, nor do we place any emphasis, because we just can't see or think clearly or rationalize or clearly about any decisions we're making.
Yeah. So diet for you now is focused on those anti-inflammatory, or removing inflammatory foods and focusing on an anti-inflammatory diet. Is that right?
Absolutely. And it's lucky now, if you're entering this journey now, like when I was diagnosed 20 years ago, and when were you diagnosed?
Yeah, I was 22, so 23, 4 years ago.
Yeah. 30, 20. So
1996 I was.
Yeah. So back then, food labelling laws were, they're not the way that they are now. We'd have to ring ahead and go, I'm a celiac, we're coming for dinner, can you please make sure that everything's gluten-free? Because the food labelling laws weren't as strict as they are now, what they thought was gluten-free wasn't. Like corn flour, now it has to be labelled wheatened corn flour. But if you've just got a packet of corn flour with no advertising on it that wheat's in there, you think it's safe, and you poison someone for a couple of days. So for you, those of you starting the journey now, you're incredibly lucky to be able to just pick up anything, and it will tell you whether it's safe or not. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
So coming back to the stress and how we manage that, and, I know that you're a big essential oil lover like me. Tell us from a stress management point of view, and I might ask you for thyroid support as well, but from a stress management point of view, what are your go-to essential oils?
I love my firs of the morning. Okay, so Douglas fir, Siberian fir, black spruce, some of the wooded oils, the big forest oils, my Ava Vitae. And I like, with my breathing exercises of a morning, I just sit, and they're part of my meditation. I will have them diffused. I will have them on my chest. I will just sit there and inhale them. And that reminds me, particularly if I'm not outside, it reminds me of being outside and in nature, and the expansiveness of that. And we know they are really specific grounding oils to ground the energy first up of the morning.
Yeah, I like that.
I also love Balance because of that. So Balance is a specific blend by doTERRA. So I pop that on the soles of my feet of a morning, and again, that it just is like aligns all my chakras and brings me down. And I have that that firm, calm foundation to start the day. I'm a big lover of clary sage.
Yep,
So clary,
me too.
yeah. And that one's quite specific for what we're talking about at the moment.
Yeah, there's been
action.
some research into that too, hasn't there?
Yeah, some really great research.
Yeah.
And I've just got off a call with Dr. Danielle talking about post-traumatic stress disorder, and thyroid dysfunction is a comorbidity in post-traumatic stress.
Oh, wow.
And one of the oil that she cited for thyroid dysfunction is clary sage.
Uh-huh. So how do you use your clary sage?
Clary sage is really cool as a skin oil as well, and also to help balance hormones, and particularly because I'm of that age, perimenopausal stage.
But I like that grounding, calming your central nervous system from the beginning of the day. I like that.
Yeah, because I'm a flighty. I can go on empty. And so it's about reversing that. And I still, because an old habit is hard to reverse, if I get traction, I will still run fast.
Yeah.
So if everything's done in the morning, it's kind of like throwing your withania, your maca powder, your cacao, your dandelion, everything in that morning smoothie.
Yeah, it just sets you up.
Done. Exactly. Yeah. And we're fast and furious, and we just like to achieve, because, again, that's another energy personality type around people who attract this.
I know, it's so fascinating that
it is
that side of thyroid. And in fact, I heard I know I wrote an article about it last week, but I actually heard Dr. Karazian being interviewed by Pete Evans fairly recently, and Pete Evans asked him that question, and Dr. Karazian, I'm sure you know, but for those that don't know, is big into thyroid research and functional medicine. And he said, look, depends who you ask, as to whether that's a thing that type A personality, and that person, well, I don't know if he asked specifically about that personality, but also the idea of not speaking out, and that your thyroid sits on your throat, and that often people who have Hashimoto's and thyroid disorders don't speak out and speak their truth. And Dr. Karazian said, look, it's difficult. There's no research into it. It would be a very difficult thing to research. But he said certainly when you talk to a lot of functional practitioners, they definitely believe that anecdotally to be part of that picture. So, so that mind-body energy is so fascinating.
And what I didn't mention is I often chant of a morning as well to help open my thyroid.
Okay. It's sort of part of that meditation and things as
absolutely. Well. First off of the morning, yes.
Yeah. Okay. And do you have, so that's sort of your morning essential oil stress management routine. Do you have, are there any other things that you call on during the day, or that are, other?
For brain fog, I love In Tune, and I found some notes by Dr. Hill that I wrote probably 5 years ago that suggests that In Tune is one of those oils that we would like to use as part of our protocol. Yeah, so it goes straight across the back here in my hairline, straight into the brain.
It's a beautiful one. I put that on before we started talking this morning, because I really wanted to be, focused and concentrated. And, for those listening that don't know, it's a focus blend, an essential oil focus blend. So beautiful for that brain support.
Amazing. So I would probably put that In Tune on again at lunchtime. Yep. And then if needed, if I'm doing anything at night, as in a class or need to be cognitively aware, I will use that in the evening as well. I'm a big lover of my Aroma Touch. I love the blend. If you pull that blend apart, the oils in there, again, are really supportive to a fast and furious mindset. It just can't, it's great. I love that one. Just for, I call it my rushing women's oil.
Oh, that's a good way of looking at it. I use that every night before I go to bed.
Yes.
The aroma touch. On my legs, it helps them stop twitching.
It is a fantastic one for that twitching and that muscle stripping ache that can come with thyroid. Yeah. And that's normally my number one sign. If my thyroid, if I've pushed myself too far, even to this day, it starts with my achy limbs and my legs. And it's like, okay, what have I done? And then I backtrack. It's like, oh, I haven't slept well. And it's normally sleep. It's normally, I'm not waking restored. I'm fast and furious. There is too many things on my plate.
Yeah. So then it's that strip back. Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
okay,
diary management is really important as well. So I will put a good hour and a half in the day for me.
Great.
And that's external from it. That's, I might do a massage once a week. That doesn't include that time. It is just that filling up cup, calming, quietening, restorative function, that space in the day to be able to communicate to me. Because like my massage and my exercise is almost part of therapy, even though it's joyful and it's stress it manages my stress well and I love it. There is still a therapy around it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally makes sense to me.
Yeah.
It's part of how you're proactively managing your health, which is different to time out for you.
Exactly. So time out is really important for me to play that, like almost that generational catch up.
Yeah, I think what's really fascinating about that is, I mean, we're recording this, we're just sort of starting to come out of lockdown from coronavirus. And so a lot of us haven't been racing around in the same ways that we were 6 months ago. But it sounds like, you know, over time, what you've done is really build in some boundaries so that, you know, even when things get back to normal, whatever normal is, that you've got boundaries in place because you know yourself really well. You know that you are a get up and go, run at 100 miles an hour, don't want to stop, take lots of things on. But you also know that that's going to burn you out. So you've put some mechanisms in place. And to me, that is just such wisdom. You know, it really is. It sounds obvious, but it's not obvious and it's not easy to do. So, and I'm sure if you're like me, you do it well sometimes and not at other times, and that's life. But to have been able to actually acknowledge that, work out a solution and put those boundaries in place is just really great self-leadership.
Thank you. I feel the most well that I felt in a long time, and I was only reflecting again, going over the questions that you preempted this with today. I wondered how much of the slowdown has contributed to my body finding its next level of balance again.
Yeah. I know for me, I've certainly had a lot better sleep or more sleep. Because I haven't had to get up early to take the kids to school early. Yeah. So I think I've had a good couple of months of better sleep, and I think that's definitely helped me. So,
So evening, I love my frankincense. I love my florals. I'm loving Buddha wood. I'm loving jasmine, and I love my frankincense of an evening. Maybe some ylang ylang, some vetiver. They're the ones I'm drawn to again to just deeply calm me. Find that support my sleep hormones and allow me to sleep deeply, because I only really started sleeping deeply probably 5 years ago.
Okay. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So essential oils have been a big part of that.
Absolutely.
Sleep hygiene, sleep health.
It was frankincense and lavender that helped me access deep sleep for the first time.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, and so when you've had a lifetime of being chronically sleep deprived, that's massive, isn't it? So
it is. And I notice now if I don't have my lights out by 10 o'clock at night, I can feel my cortisol levels start to rise and my serotonin, like I flip into night owl and I can't go to sleep. I flip into wired. So it's really important that I need to be
disciplined with
rested and ready by 10.
Yeah.
And that's the listening to your circadian rhythms. And that has been so pivotal in my own personal management of my disorder.
Yeah. Fabulous. I think for me, that's certainly something that still needs a little bit of, I know it all, but I've got to dig into that a little bit deeper. But that's the journey, isn't it? And I think we can't dig into everything all at once. And so I suppose that's the other thing. Yeah, if you're listening, Jackie and I have just been saying we've been diagnosed 20-something years, been dealing with this probably for much longer than that, and I think we're both very proactive in managing our health and digging into things. So we're talking here when we've had many, many years of exploration, research, trying things that work, things that don't. And what's working for you now and me now might not be in 6 months' time. We might need to look at other things. So, yeah, if you're listening and you feel a bit not sure where to start, just start with one thing. And, just don't get overwhelmed, I think, and just start.
Oh, gosh, no.
Just start somewhere and be consistent. Yeah.
Yeah. I love a journal, keeping a journal for a couple of weeks, like a food, mood and energy journal and a sleep journal, and no judgments, and you will start to notice patterns and you will start to notice the one thing that really makes a difference to your lack of energy, your lack of feeling well. And it's probably that one thing that I would look at first.
Yeah, great. That's great advice.
Yeah, and easy little steps and kind of nail and understand that one and then move on. Yeah. Because this disorder affects us on every level. It needs to, you need to just hone it in.
Yeah. I want to ask about finish sort of, I suppose, rounding out the essential oil aspect of our conversation. And are there particular oils that you use for thyroid support specifically?
There is. I have a blend that I use. Again, it's part of my morning regime. I love my myrrh, my clary sage. I love my clove. I love my lemongrass. I love my copaiba. I love my frank. I'm a peppermint girl. I love peppermint more than I love spearmint. So
me
peppermint,
too. Yeah.
Yeah, so peppermint is in my blend. I've got a bit of bergamot in there and a bit of passion at the moment. I think that's everything that's in my thyroid support happy blend at the moment. They're the biggies.
Yeah.
As well as my skincare and everything else.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Melissa. I love Melissa.
Okay. Yeah.
Melissa's always in there. It's kind of like a constitutional one for me.
Okay. It's funny how we have our core oils and then the ones that maybe rotate and change. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you for that, because I think people often ask, what essential oils are good for thyroid support, and, so it's always good to know what your favourites are.
Yeah. Lavender would be a goodie, but if you give me lavender at 6 a.m. in the morning, I'm asleep all day. It knocks me for a six. So that if you don't find that lavender does that to you, add lavender into your morning blend. I've got my clary sage for kind of that same use of what you would use lavender for.
Yeah, okay. And so as part of your overall thyroid health management, are there any things that we haven't talked about yet that has been key to your thyroid health, like any other tools or tricks, or not tricks, but, tools that we haven't covered?
I think we've covered pretty much everything. If I feel like my thyroid, and I call it like it's hiccuped, I will go back, and the things that I look at are, I will go back and look at my sleep, look at my diet, and I would look at my boundaries and self-care.
Okay. Yeah, well, they're the three key things for you to look back, examine, see where things might have come unstuck.
Yeah, we've talked about all of those.
Yeah, that we have.
I think everything, absolutely. I love good legs up a wall every couple of days. I think that's a really easy restorative thing that you can do in the office.
So what do you do?
Where you are.
Tell us what you do.
Okay, if I'm watching TV and I'm feeling a bit kind of drained and a bit achy, and that I need to fill my cup, fill my petrol tank, I call it my petrol tank, I will just literally turn around on the couch and put my, watch the news upside down.
Oh, right, wow.
Or I just find a space. I just jump off the computer and find a space and put my legs up the wall, straight up the wall, and aroma touch on my lower back, so around my adrenals. I would breathe that in as well and pop some on my legs.
Fabulous. What I love is so practical.
Yeah, it has to be practical. Yeah. All of lifestyle changes has to be practical. Otherwise, you're not going to do them, particularly for 20 years.
Oh, totally. Exactly.
Oh, boring.
I know. Well, look, thank you, Jackie, so much for sharing your story with us today, and so many practical tips and positivity. And I think they're the two things that I'm really wanting people to experience, is having a thyroid condition can be positive, and it needs to be practical, as you said. So you've been all of those things for us today. So I'm really, really grateful that you've shared your story with us. So thank you.
My pleasure. And can I thank you, Annabelle, for being such an advocate and a warrior, and giving voice to something that we often don't voice ourselves. So thank you so much for looking and walking in wellness with thyroid disease and advocating for all of us. I love what you're doing, so thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Let's Talk Thyroid. I would love it if you would subscribe to the podcast and share it with others that you know with thyroid problems. Let's get the message out there. If you'd like to connect with me further, the best place to do that is via my website, annabellebateman.com. From there, you'll be able to join my Facebook group, book a strategy session with me, download my freebie, and access any show notes for this episode. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time. Bye.
The information presented and discussed in this podcast is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease and should not be used as a substitute for proper advice from a qualified professional.